tricks. I'm really excited about this. So it was actually, let's see, a long time ago we did a poll, and this actually tied with the probiotic episode. And I was, at the time, really excited to do the probiotic episode, so I just went ahead and did that one first. But apparently just as many people were interested in weight loss tips and tricks. And I'm not surprised, and that's awesome. And I really think it's important that everybody understands the difference between what I'm going to be talking about today and regular dieting, or what we all think of as dieting. So just to introduce the show, so Summer Tomato Live is an online interactive classroom where I tell you all you need to know about the food and health topics that you vote are the most important. I'm your host, Daria Pino, creator of the website Summer Tomato, where you can find even more healthy eating tips. Summer Tomato is also where you can go after the show next week when I publish this live on the website, and that will be where you can find any of the show notes or any of the links I discussed in today's episode. If you want to check that stuff out in the future, it'll be there at summertomato.com. So I'm going to be talking quite a bit. I'm just going to give my normal presentation. It'll be 20 to 30 minutes. And at any point during the discussion, if you have a question and you're watching live, feel free to, there should be a little red Ask a Question button up at the corner there. And go ahead and use that, and that'll put your question into a queue that I will answer at the end of the show. Just so you know, that if you ask more than one question, your last question will be the only one that I see. The questions you asked before that will drop off. So make sure you answer them one at a time, and make sure that I've answered your question before asking another one. If you can also try asking stuff in the texts or in the chat room down here, because sometimes if I don't know the answer, sometimes some of the other reader or watchers will have an answer for you down there. So you guys can chat it up in the chat room, ask questions, and if you want to call in live and chat with me during the show, which if you have your own like weight loss issues and you want some help troubleshooting on that, feel free to call in. Just make sure you have some headphones so that there's no feedback during the show. Awesome. So and if you aren't watching live, if you're watching the recorded version of this and you want to participate in future episodes because they are so awesome, you can sign up for the newsletter Tomato Slice, which is how you get the password. And that is at tinyletter.com/summertomato. So thank you all for joining us. The next show will be, actually, normally I do 2 weeks between shows and like sort of office hours in between, but what I have actually something special scheduled for next week. It's reader Patrick Haug. He's from Germany, and I chatted with him recently. He's lost over 60 pounds and wants to chat with me and for all you guys to watch, and he's going to tell us his secrets, how he did it. And it's a really interesting story, and so that will be next Tuesday. Because he's in Germany, I have to do it at around noon, so it'll be at noon next Tuesday, May 31st. So I hope you guys can join us. I know it's a weird hour. I don't expect it to be a huge turnout, but if you can make it, that would be awesome. He's got a great story to tell. Okay, so that's it for the intro. Let's go ahead and get started. So no questions so far. Awesome. And obviously, always feel free to stop me if anything goes wrong. Just let me know in the chat if the stream starts failing or something like that. Okay, so before we start talking about weight loss, I just want to make it very clear that there are two ways, in my view, there are two ways sort of to approach weight loss. And so I think it's really important that we start with a clear definition, that we know what we're talking about, and a clear understanding of why you want to lose weight. So I feel like most people fall into the category of the first group, which is they desire some sort of long-term weight loss. They want a permanent solution to being healthy and being a healthy body weight and looking good and feeling good and all that. But then there's also, and this is totally valid, there's also people with short-term weight loss goals. For example, maybe you have a wedding coming up, you want to look great. Maybe there's a reunion, you want to show up an old boyfriend or something and look awesome. And those are totally valid reasons to want to lose weight, and that's fine. I just want to say that if short-term weight loss is your goal, that it's really easy actually, and you don't need me, because basically for that sort of diet, any of them will do. Just pick one of the low-calorie weight loss plans and just stick to it. And they all work. They'll all work for some short amount of time. You'll feel better if you choose one that focuses a little more on healthier food. You might transition better to a healthier diet afterwards if you pick one that focuses on healthier food. And when I say that, what I mean is probably my favorite diet, like actual diet plan where you follow the daily steps, probably South Beach. I like that one a little bit. The Zone diet isn't bad. Slow carb isn't that bad, but I don't like the binge days. It doesn't really matter. Pick the one that works for you and go nuts. And, I do recommend cutting, the less sugar or flour you eat, the faster you'll lose weight. But like I said, you don't need me for those. So if that's your goal, just pick one and run with it. But what I caution about with that sort of diet strategy, my only warning to anyone that's their goal, is one of my biggest problems, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a second, but one of the biggest problems that I have is the sort of diet mentality that comes along with those sort of short-term weight loss goals. And what I mean by that is it sort of puts you in this situation where you're either dieting or you're not. There's foods that are allowed and foods that are bad, and the ones that are allowed are good foods and you need as much of them as you want, and then there's the bad foods and you can't touch them ever and they're pure evil. And it sets up this dichotomy that's like totally not realistic for the long term. But so what happens is people get trapped in that. They'll go on Atkins for a while, and then of course they can't maintain it for that long because it's a miserable life. And so after like a month or two, they'll sort of have integrated these foods are okay. So they'll eat like 4 burgers or something without the buns and feel very virtuous. But then they'll have a breakdown at some point later in the day and, maybe nibble, maybe they'll drink too much or maybe they'll nibble on some fries and they won't be strict about it. And the problem is you can't not be strict about it if you're going to be eating like 4 burgers. And because if you start introducing carbs at that point, you totally undo the diet and you will gain weight. And this is sort of what happens. People think they're sort of still on the diet, but they're not. And it becomes very confusing to people. And it's just not effective and it's not a healthy approach. And you end up with this very weird relationship with food where it's always sort of like against you. And that's no good. So that is one of my biggest problems with the short-term diets is what it does to your brain and how you approach eating from then on. So I'm not going to talk about those anymore. Today we're going to be focusing on like a long-term, I'd like to say, dietless approach to weight loss. And I think that most people will be, in the long run, much happier with this, even though you won't lose weight as fast. And it's a little less glamorous, but I think it's more effective and it bodes well for a longer, better quality life. So the first thing I want to talk about then is sort of continuing with this idea of sort of the diet mentality is that the first priority if you're gonna approach health and weight loss this way is you have to have the right mindset. And what that means is you really need to leave that short-term diet thinking behind. And that's really hard for some people. It was really hard for me. As someone, I grew up in Southern California. If you've ever read my diet history on Summer Tomato in the About section, I've been dieting since I was like 11. And at first it wasn't even about weight. It was just because everyone was doing it. And, it's really hard to get out of that mentality where it's like, it's okay to eat food and to not count carbs or not spend so many hours on the treadmill every week. You get used to tallying up these things, and it does take some practice to actually stop worrying about that stuff and be like, okay, I'm just going to focus on being healthy. But I think that's really what you need to do. You need to focus on health first. And so part of that is that you need to stop thinking of foods as either good or bad, because that no one's ever gotten fat from eating one cupcake, right? Nobody would say cupcake's good for you, but one cupcake isn't going to make you fat. So thinking of foods as good or bad isn't really helpful. It's always going to be about dosage and volume. So, and that's what I mean by that. Like, frequency and dosage. How much are you eating? How often are you eating it? So take foods off the good and bad list and just start to think more in terms of patterns and habits. And you're going to get much farther with this approach. Another thing that is important to remember, that if you're really getting rid of that short-term mentality, you have to understand that your life is right now. And so your first step toward eating healthy is your next meal. What I mean by that is, let's say tonight you already have on your schedule, you're going to be having like ribs and mashed potatoes. Like that's on the dinner plan. And so you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm watching Daria's show. I'm having ribs later tonight no matter what. So I'm just, screw it. I'm just going to go nuts. I'll start my healthy Daria eating tomorrow, whatever. Healthy tomato eating. That is absolutely the wrong approach, because that's short-term thinking. There's no more like wild abandonment just for today, and we'll make up for it tomorrow. Every single meal counts, and every single meal you need to practice. So let's say you are going to have ribs with mashed potatoes for dinner, and it's going to be sort of a gluttonous feast. Work on, if you can't, if it's impossible already, the menu's already set, you're not going to get a salad tonight. Think about other things you can do to make it a healthier meal, even if the food doesn't change. So eat slower. Chew. Take a smaller portion. Ribs, they make you full pretty easily. You don't need a giant plate of them. And if you eat slowly, it's much easier to not eat a giant plate of them than if you're just like scarfing them down like a pig. So the next meal that you eat, the next snack that you eat, that's when healthy eating starts, and you take it meal at a time. And you just use every opportunity you can to make the healthiest decision possible. And you decide at that moment if it's worth indulging. And it's not like, I'm going to go as crazy as I want right now. That's not what I mean by indulgence. It's like, is it worth having something, a little special because it's someone's birthday or it's some special occasion, and you want to experience that. And that's fine, but you need to weigh that against everything else you've been doing, because you know how you've been eating and what your future is looking like, and approach it that way, and not as, I'm on the diet, I'm off the diet, I'll start being good tomorrow, because tomorrow never comes. It's right now. Be zen about the whole thing. Live in the moment. And like I hinted at with the ribs example, is there's more to being healthy and having a healthy relationship with food than just choosing the right foods. So practice mindful eating, even when you're in a hurry, even when you're alone, even if sometimes you have to eat like on the run. Like I've definitely, we're all busy. I've definitely been in situations where it's like, I'm going to another 2-hour meeting. I have no food, so I'm going to be like stuffing my face with almonds on my way to this other place just so I don't like starve. But you can still chew those almonds. You don't have to like inhale them. Just practice mindful approaches to food. Learn to chew. Take a breath between bites. Drink water, and start that today. What I was saying is that you also have to pay attention to how you feel. So feeling good should be part of your goal, not just how you look, because the feeling good part will come first. And the weight loss comes as a byproduct of healthy habits and a healthy lifestyle. And so you can't put the carriage in front of the horse. First start to, if you notice that you're feeling better, be confident that you're making progress. The weight loss will come. Okay. So when you start on a path to healthy living and a healthy lifestyle, and you want to lose weight, the first step actually has to be, in the changes you make, the very first step has to be developing healthy habits. And I know I sort of beat this dead horse to death, but I can't stress it enough, because so many people try to skip ahead. They just want the weight loss, but you can't get there until you've set up a foundation for success underneath you. And that can only come from healthy habits. So basically, you need to build the healthy habits first, so that when you start eliminating the bad ones, you have a life still. You have foods you know how to eat. You have a way to continue on without feeling deprived. So the way you should go about building these healthy habits is always start by looking at the bright spots in your life already. So one thing you can do is, and I'll talk about this more as it comes up, but I think probably for a lot of people a really good place to start is by starting a food journal. And you could do it with pictures,